Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. In our last deep dive, we really got into the weeds of the 5G network fabric, that incredible superhighway that's connecting our world. Well, today, we're tackling the other absolutely critical side of that coin. How in the world do we secure it all? We are diving headfirst into what is probably the single most significant shift in cybersecurity strategy in a generation, and that is the move to a zero-trust architecture. And let me be clear, this isn't just another buzzword you hear floating around. For any organization trying to operate today, it's pretty much a mandate for survival. For decades, we built our security like a medieval fortress. We had these high walls, these deep moats, all designed to keep the attackers out. But this quote, it just says it all, doesn't it? That model has completely crumbled. Why? Because the valuable assets we're trying to protect, they don't sit neatly inside those castle walls anymore. Our people are working from everywhere, our applications now live in the cloud, and our data is being generated at the edge. The old model is fundamentally broken. So the big question is, what comes next? To answer that, here's the roadmap for our discussion today. First, we're going to perform a bit of an autopsy on that old model to see exactly why those castle walls came tumbling down. Then, we'll get into the core philosophy of zero trust itself. From there, we'll explore its single most critical component, the idea of identity as the new security perimeter. After that, we'll look at some real-world applications, and finally, we'll wrap up by summarizing why this mandate is so incredibly critical right now. All right, let's get right into it. To really, truly appreciate this new paradigm, we first have to understand exactly what went wrong with the old one. So think of this section as a postmortem, an investigation into the perimeter-based security model that really dominated our thinking for so long. So let's get right to the heart of the matter. The entire traditional castle-and-moat model was built on a single, and as it turns out, fatally flawed assumption. So what was it? What was that critical mistake? Well, the core assumption was this really simple binary idea of trust. Everything was split into just two camps. You had outside the perimeter, the big, bad, untrusted internet, and that was met with this hard, crunchy exterior of firewalls and specialized hardware. But once you were authenticated and got inside, you entered the trusted zone. And this, right here, is the crucial flaw. The inside was a soft, chewy center. The minute you were in, you were implicitly trusted. You were often granted broad access to pretty much everything. The system just assumed that if you were inside the castle walls, you must be one of the good guys. And look, this worked for a while, back when everyone worked in the office, on company machines, accessing servers that were just down the hall. But, as we all know, that world is long gone. So, that architecture wasn't just flawed, it was fragile. It just couldn't withstand the seismic shifts in how we all work and use technology today. So the next logical question has to be, what were the powerful trends that just systematically dismantled this old model? As you can see, there were really four key forces that just shattered the perimeter. First, cloud adoption. The moment your company moved to software as a service apps like Salesforce, well, your data wasn't in your castle anymore. When your developers started spinning up servers and platforms like AWS, your perimeter became completely irrelevant. Second, the mobile and remote workforce. Suddenly, your users were the perimeter, connecting from coffee shops, from their homes, from anywhere, and forcing all their traffic through a slow, clunky corporate VPN. It was just a terrible user experience. Third, the rise of IoT and the edge. This explosion of connected devices, from sensors to smart cameras, created millions of new endpoints, all outside that traditional network. And finally, the constant, relentless sophistication of attackers. They learned that the perimeter was just a single point of failure. All it took was one successful phishing email, and boom, they were inside that soft, chewy center, free to move around and find the crown jewels. The conclusion was just inescapable. You simply can't defend a perimeter that doesn't exist anymore. And this brings us right to our second section. With the old model in ruins, a whole new philosophy was needed. And I want to stress this. It's not a specific product you can buy. It's not a single tool, but it's a fundamental shift in mindset. And this is zero trust, a term that was first coined way back in 2010 by an analyst named John Kindervag at Forrester Research. It's really a new set of rules designed for this new, perimeterless reality we live in. So what is this philosophy built on? Well, it all rests on three foundational pillars. Number 1, never trust, always verify. Number 2, implement least privilege access. And number 3, assume breach. Let's really dig in and see what each of these means in practice. This right here is the foundational mantra of Zero Trust. It completely inverts the old model. Instead of the old saying trust but verify, the new rule is never trust, always verify. No request, and I mean no request, is trusted by default. Period. It does not matter if that request is coming from inside the same office building or from halfway across the planet. Trust is no longer a one-time login event. It's a dynamic confidence score that has to be earned and continuously re-earned based on all kinds of signals, like your identity, your device's health, and your location for every single session. Now, this second principle directly attacks that old model's soft, chewy center. Least privilege access dictates that you only grant the absolute minimum permissions necessary for a specific task. That's it. No more broad access to entire network segments. And this is often implemented through something called just-in-time access. So for example, let's say a developer needs to troubleshoot a production database. Instead of having standing access 24/7, the system grants them temporary credentials for just 30 minutes. And after that time is up, that access is automatically revoked. This completely prevents what we call privilege creep, and it dramatically shrinks the blast radius if an account ever gets compromised. The third principle forces a radical but totally necessary change in thinking. You have to assume breach. You must design your network with the assumption that an attacker is already inside. Your goal shifts from just prevention to containment. I love this analogy. Think of a traditional network like a cruise ship. It's got these wide open decks, and if you get a breach in one area, water can quickly flood the entire vessel. A zero-trust network, on the other hand, is designed like a submarine. It's built with multiple, sealed, watertight compartments, a concept we call micro-segmentation. If one compartment is breached, the damage is contained right there. In practice, this means using software-defined policies to create these tiny little security zones around individual applications and strictly controlling all the traffic between them. This is how you stop an attacker's lateral movement dead in its tracks. Okay, let's move on to our third section. So we've talked about the philosophy, but how does it actually work? What are the mechanics? If the network is no longer the perimeter, then what is? This part is all about the huge shift from policing network locations to managing identity, which is now the new control plane for modern security. So let's just ask the question directly. In a world without a traditional network edge, where do we enforce security? The answer is both simple and profound. Identity is the new perimeter. The entire control plane shifts. We are no longer primarily concerned with where a request is coming from, but rather who or even what is making it. The absolute beating heart of any zero-trust implementation is a robust identity and access management system, what we call an IAM system. The very first step in managing this new identity perimeter is robust authentication. And in a zero-trust world, a simple username and password, that's just not considered sufficient proof of identity anymore. It's not enough. Multi-Factor Authentication, or MFA, is a non-negotiable, foundational requirement. The way it works is by requiring a user to provide evidence from two or more of these distinct categories, or factors, to prove they are who they say they are. So it layers something you know, like a password, with something you have, like a code from an authenticator app, and maybe something you are, like your fingerprint. This layering just dramatically increases the difficulty for an attacker to compromise an account. But a modern IAM system does way more than just check for MFA. It performs what's known as conditional or adaptive access. So it's not just asking, is this the right user? It's asking a whole series of contextual questions in real time. Is this user connecting from a known trusted company device? Is their security software up to date? Are they in their typical geographic location? The system analyzes all these signals to generate a risk score. So if the risk is low, like in that first row, access is seamless. You don't even notice it. But if a risk is detected, say a login from a new country at 3 a.m., the system can dynamically adapt. It might require what we call a step-up MFA challenge, or if the risk is high enough, it might just block the access attempt entirely. All right, so for our fourth section, let's see how this all comes together in the real world. I mean, it sounds great in theory, but how have leading technology organizations actually taken these principles and applied them at scale? You really can't talk about ZeroTrust in practice without mentioning Google's BeyondCorp initiative. It actually began over a decade ago. After facing some really sophisticated nation-state attacks, they realized the old VPN model was broken, so they completely re-architected their entire approach. In the BeyondCorp model, there is no such thing as a trusted corporate network. Being on the office Wi-Fi grants you absolutely nothing. Instead, every single request to an internal application is funneled through an intelligent access proxy. And this proxy does two critical things. First, it verifies the user's identity. And second, it validates the security posture of their device. Only if both the user and their device meet the required policy is access granted. And the result? Secure, granular access from any network without needing a traditional VPN. Now, let's be realistic. Building a custom solution like Google did is a massive undertaking. So a new category of technology has emerged to make this whole process a lot easier. It's called Secure Access Service Edge, or SASE, pronounced SASE. What SASE platforms do is they converge networking and a whole suite of security services into a single cloud-native solution. It acts like a global enforcement point, applying consistent zero-trust policies to any user on any device trying to access any application, no matter where they are in the world. This is a really common question, and it's a point of clarification that's worth making. Does implementing zero-trust mean you just unplug all your VPNs and throw them out? Well, not necessarily. While we are definitely moving away from that old model where a VPN granted you broad, trusted access to the entire corporate network, the underlying technology can still be repurposed. In a modern zero-trust architecture, a VPN might be used to create a secure, granular, point-to-point connection to a specific legacy application, but, and this is the key part, only after the user and their device have been fully authenticated and authorized by that identity-aware control plane. So their role becomes much, much more limited and specific. And that brings us to our final section. We've deconstructed the past, we've defined the future, so now let's just reinforce why this isn't just some technical curiosity, but truly an urgent mandate for any organization that wants to remain secure in today's world. So after everything we've covered today, if there's one single, most important idea you should walk away with, what is it? Here's the key takeaway. The computing continuum we live in, stretching from the cloud to the edge, has irrevocably broken the old castle-and-moat security model. It's obsolete. It's dead. The new rule is simple, but it is profound. Never trust, always verify. For every user, every device, and every connection. Identity has replaced the network as the perimeter we have to defend, and we secure it with technologies like multi-factor authentication and adaptive access. And finally, we have to build our systems assuming they will be breached, using micro-segmentation to contain threats. This is the zero-trust mandate. It's really the only way to build a resilient architecture for today and for tomorrow. We're going to continue exploring this new landscape in our next deep dive, where we'll be talking about distributed intelligence, AI from cloud to edge. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you found this valuable and you want to continue learning with us, please subscribe to our channel, Tech AI and Beyond. We'll see you next time.